Apple Tree Audios presents a spoken word project for your listening pleasure. We sincerely hope that you enjoy the following production. Thank you for joining me again, under the apple tree. Today, I want to talk about toxic positivity and the damaging effects it can have on us. You know, it often strikes me how obsessed people are with positivity, as though it's some kind of holy grail, as though smiling through the pain will make it stop hurting, as though telling someone to look on the bright side will somehow part the clouds, erase the damage, or undo the weight of whatever they've been carrying for years. It's become a mantra, repeated so often that it's lost all meaning. Just stay positive, they say. Good vibes only. As if life were something you could brute force your way through with enough motivational quotes and forced optimism. But I've never trusted things that demand only one side of the story. And I've never liked the sound of people who turn their backs on shadow just to bask in some artificial light. Not only is it dishonest, it's also unbalanced and dangerous. Because we don't live in a one-note world or grow in straight lines, the universe we live in wouldn't function if it was saturated with positivity. Just like it wouldn't survive if everything was negative. You need both. The charge and the pull. The sun and the void. Everything that exists does so because of the tension between opposites. Positive and negative aren't enemies. They're bound together, like breath and blood, like tide and shore. And when you strip one away in favor of the other, you don't get healing. You get imbalance. You get denial. You get a world built on pretending. Throughout my life, I've experienced more than my fair share of negative things. I've lost my home. I've been to the edge of death more times than I care to count, and not all of them were quiet or clean. I've been stabbed, beaten, robbed, pushed to the brink of suicide, and faced walls I was never meant to climb. Barriers that didn't only block my way, but dared me to try. And I did. Again and again. I stood back up, even when my legs were shaking, even when the world felt like it was pressing down from every side. I've fought against darkness that most people would never even recognize, let alone survive, and I carry the scars like old friends who still whisper to me when the night's too quiet. But that isn't all there is to the story. I've also known joy, not the sort people post about online, but real, unfiltered joy. The kind that steals the breath from your lungs and leaves you stunned in its beauty. I've felt love so complete it silenced every voice of doubt that ever tried to tell me I wasn't enough. I've tasted laughter that bubbled up like a spring, warm and unexpected, lighting up my whole chest. I've known the kind of sex that rewires your entire sense of self, the kind that doesn't just touch your body, but awakens something ancient in your soul. I've stood in places that made me feel infinite. Heard music that brought tears to my eyes, and felt hands in mine that reminded me I'm alive. I've been kissed like I mattered, held like I was home, and the thing is, I wouldn't trade the bad to keep the good, because they're connected, they're part of the same current. Just like a key fits a lock, a door fits a frame, a plug fits a socket, or a body fits another body. Positive and negative aren't enemies, they're companions. You can't separate one from the other and still have meaning. The sorrow gave shape to the joy, and the agony made the laughter sweeter. The risk made the love real. The reality of it is we live in a wide, expansive universe that simply wouldn't exist if things lean too hard one way or the other. Too much light and everything burns. Too much dark and nothing grows. But in balance, in motion between both, there's life and truth and everything that matters. And so it is. The real danger in pushing positivity as a kind of cure-all is that it slowly erodes our ability to be honest with each other. It teaches people to bury their pain instead of facing it. It creates this distorted lens through which anything raw, anything uncomfortable, or anything that doesn't fit the narrative of constant self-improvement and the manufactured joy is labelled as wrong, as weakness, or as failure. And the more we lean into that, the more disconnected we become, not only from each other, but from ourselves. We start to doubt our own reactions, to question our sadness, to feel shame for being angry or exhausted or afraid, as though those feelings somehow make us lesser. We start smiling in places where we should be screaming, offering up cheerful small talk when what we really need is to fall apart in somebody's arms and be told, it's okay not to be okay. I find that it filters into the way we treat grief and the way we talk about trauma, the way we handle conflict. It turns healing into performance. You see it everywhere. When people rush to bounce back, to stay strong, to be grateful it wasn't worse, all while choking back the very emotions that need space to breathe. We see survivors being told to look for the silver lining before they've even begun to process what happened to them. We see people discouraged from expressing real emotion in case it brings down the mood of others. We see the world slowly being reshaped into a place where the only acceptable face is a smiling one, where pain has to be dressed up as growth, and nobody's allowed to simply sit in the dark for a while and say, honestly, that they're struggling. And I can't help but think how much damage that does in the long run, because when you teach people to hide their wounds, you also teach them to hide their humanity. And when enough people start doing that, the world becomes lonelier, colder, and more alienating for everyone. We stop knowing how to hold space for each other, and we stop knowing how to tell the truth. And worst of all, we stop knowing how to listen when someone finally finds the courage to speak. What so many people seem to forget, or maybe what they never learned at all, is that healing doesn't always come dressed up and ready to kick ass with a smile, and it doesn't always arrive with clarity, or grace, or poetic timing. Sometimes it's quiet and ugly, awkward and slow. A stumbling kind of crawl through the dark, where progress isn't measured in revelations or clean turning points, but in whether or not you manage to get out of bed that day, whether you manage to answer the phone, or make a sandwich, or take a breath that didn't feel like it came with a fistful of glass in your lungs. And that's still healing, and it's still part of the process, even if it doesn't fit the neat little boxes people like to dress their advice in. Because truthfully, you don't get to pick and choose which parts of yourself are allowed to show up in the recovery. You don't get to section off your grief from your joy, your fear from your hope, your anger from your kindness. They come together, tangled up in ways you might not understand, but that doesn't mean they don't belong. You might be holding a broken heart in one hand and a new beginning in the other, and still not know what to do with either, and that too is part of the human experience. Messy, inconvenient, absolutely valid. And if there's one thing I've learned through all of it, it's that nobody gets better by pretending they're already fine. Nobody finds peace by choking down their pain just to make other people comfortable. Nobody recovers from a trauma by skipping past the parts that hurt the most, just so they can say they're okay. Healing isn't linear, it isn't beautiful or tidy. But what it really is rough and uncertain and wildly unphotogenic, and much often than not, it happens in silence and solitude, in the slow hours that nobody sees. So if we really cared about people, if we really meant all the things we say about support and compassion and being there for each other, we'd stop telling people to cheer up or move on or find the bright side. And instead, we'd just sit with them, quietly, without fixing or judging, without turning away when the darkness starts to speak. Because real connection doesn't come from offering advice or sugar-coated wisdom, it really comes from staying. Just staying. Truthfully, the most sacred thing we can offer each other isn't encouragement, or advice, or clever reframings of the pain we don't understand, but presence. Maybe it's the willingness to walk with someone through the thick of it without trying to steer them toward the light before they're ready. Maybe it's standing in the storm with them. Not because we have answers, but because we know what it's like to weather our own, and we understand that sometimes what keeps people breathing isn't a rescue, but a hand held tightly through the darkest hours. And in that, perhaps, there's something deeper than comfort, something closer to truth. We are, all of us, made from duality, carved from contradiction, and held together by tension. There is light in us, yes, and beauty, and unshakable joy, but there is also rage and sorrow, and pain that sits so deep it changes the shape of our bones. And we do ourselves a disservice when we pretend that one part cancels out the other. They coexist. They aren't opposites fighting for dominance. They're forces that need each other to even make sense. Joy without sorrow is just noise. Love without loss is just convenience. Peace without struggle is just stillness with no meaning. What gives those things their weight, their richness and their sharpness, is what surrounds them, is what they had to push through to become real. So if asked, I'd say no. No, I don't believe in forced positivity. I don't believe in the idea that happiness is the end goal, or that pain is something to escape from at all costs. I believe in wholeness. I believe in truth and the kind of life that allows room for every part of us to breathe. And if that means carrying sorrow alongside joy, grief alongside love, shadows alongside light, then so be it. Because that, to me, is what it really means to be alive. Thank you for joining me under the apple tree. When you leave today, I want you to carry just one small thing with you, offered gently as one soul to another, from someone who has walked through fire, who has bathed in light, and who has come to understand that both were necessary. I'm not saying you should reject positivity, not in the way those self-help books and glitter-coated Instagram captions tell you to reject negativity. Not in the way they try to push anything painful or difficult or real to the side because it doesn't match the aesthetic they're selling. What I'm saying is that you should embrace the good things. Let yourself feel them fully. Let them flood you. Let them make you laugh until your stomach hurts and cry tears of joy, without needing to justify a single one. Let yourself rest in the warmth of something kind and beautiful and unforced. And at the same time, when something hurts, when grief walks beside you, or anger tightens your chest, or everything feels a little too heavy to carry, let that be welcome too. Don't shove it down. Don't try to reframe it or cover it up with some catchy quote that sounds nice but leaves you emptier than before. Because the truth is, the painful moments give shape to the beautiful ones. The heartbreak gives meaning to the love. The cold reminds you how sweet the warmth really is, and if you let it, if you let your sorrow and your joy sit side by side without trying to silence either of them, you'll find that both have something honest to give you. I'm not telling you to live in sadness, and I'm not telling you to chase constant happiness either. I'm saying let your life be whole, let it be real, let it hold contrast, and let your negative experiences teach you how to appreciate the positive ones with your whole heart, without apology or hesitation, and with every ounce of the joy and gratitude and sheer gusto they deserve. Because in the end, it was never about being perfect. It was always about being true, and you, just as you are enough.